What's up, fellow Shield Brothers? Shield Brother 6 here with your weekly dose of history. Today on January 4th, we'll be talking about Charles I of England attack on Parliament. Charles I is depicted there bottom left, and this flag here is the royal standard known as the Unification of the Crowns, due to it depicting all three of the major crowns at the time, and the first banner that was actually unifying them. In the top left corner and bottom right corner is the English, top right Scotland, and bottom left Ireland. Background. Charles I was never popular with his parliament. Upon his ascension to the throne in 1625, members made clear that they would not be bullied, or at least they would attempt to not be bullied. In an unprecedented break with tradition, England's law-making body decided to allow the king to collect customs, duties, for only 1 year, as opposed to previous monarchs, who had been granted the right for life. Despite this, Charles decided to levy tax anyway, which angered Parliament greatly. In 1628, lawmakers forced the king to sign the Petition of Right, which recognized that the martial law Charles had imposed in many parts of England was illegal. The following year, amid a storm of controversy, the king decided to disband Parliament. It did not meet for another 11 years. This devastated the country, and this was the beginning of what was recognized as Charles' personal rule, as this is when he really took the reins and caused a lot of strife for the English people. Escalation. Early in January of 1642, plans were drawn up by members of Parliament to transfer command of the army away from the king, whose relationship with lawmakers had become extremely strained once again. He had trampled all over the House of Commons, and they were fed up with Charles I. They were angry, they were sad, they were disgusted by him. And so they came up with this plan to take away the army so that they wouldn't have to worry about being attacked. But Charles believed that as part of this plan, a group of members had encouraged Scotland to try and invade England for independence so that Parliament would have justification for taking control of the armed forces. Charles was so enraged by this, he was going to take drastic action in response. On the 4th of January, the king and a group of 400 soldiers arrived at Westminster, ready to arrest 5 conspirators that were believed to be the architects of this plot. The 5 of these architects were Denzil Holles, William Strode, John Hampden, John Pym, and Sir Arthur Hisselridge. In an unprecedented breach of tradition, the king stormed into the House of Commons, sat in the Speaker's chair, and demanded to know whether any of the accused were present in the House. The Speaker, William Lenthal, quite valorously answered, "I have neither eyes to see nor tongue to speak in this place, but as this House is pleased to direct me," taking his stand against the king, saying basically, "Your birds have flown. Hear no evil, see no evil. I can't help you, bud." And that's just, I find that heroic in a way, that this, because these aren't lords, this is the House of Commons, that this normal man, just a normal lawmaker basically, would stand up to the king for what was right, and not let him be a tyrant and push around the House of Commons. The results. As it turned out, the 5 members had been warned of their potential arrest, and had fled before Charles and his soldiers arrived. Without being able to capture the men responsible for leading the plot against him, the king was forced to leave amid a chorus of booing and angry shouts of privilege. These angry shouts were due to the fact that A, they were part of Parliament, so they had privilege to secrecy and the rights of making laws, and that the king would not trod on them. And B, the king did not have the privilege to storm Commons, nor was he technically allowed into Commons. So this angry shout of privilege had a dual meaning. It was a dual-bladed sword, and it would strike at the very heart of what the king was trying to do. The effects of this. The king's disregard of parliamentary custom and privilege did great political damage to his cause. You see, the House of Commons presented this intrusion as an armed assault on Parliament itself, and the king's reputation could never recover from this, because not only did now the lawmakers, some of the lords, but also the common people saw him as an evil tyrant who was attacking the lawmakers of the land. So amid uproar and wild rumors of civil war, the London trained bands were mobilized in support of Parliament, mind you. The 5 members were sheltered in the city. probably by the militant Puritan alderman and future regicide Isaac Pennington. It's believed that that's where they could have made a successful and safe hideout. The situation became so volatile that the king and royal family were obliged to leave London for Hampton Court on the 10th of January. The 5 members made a triumphal return to Westminster the following day after they left. This event is seen as the final catalyst for the English Civil War, which would lead to the Civil War and the loss of the crown. Although Charles I would be executed, and then there would be a republic for a time, but his son, Charles II, would regain the crown later on and reestablish the royalty in remembrance. The event is seen as the final catalyst of the English Civil War, as I said, and is commemorated every year at the state opening of Parliament. In the ceremony, Blackrod, the Queen's messenger to Parliament, walks from the Lords to the Commons and knocks, but the door is slammed in his face before he is finally allowed to enter, symbolizing the chamber's independence from the monarch and that they could not be ever again broken into like that. After knocking again, Blackrod is then allowed to enter and leads the MPs to hear the Queen's speech, which I find this very fascinating that they would have this ceremony every year showing that the Queen did not have power over Parliament. And bottom left, you can see I added the execution of Charles I and the beginning of the Civil War due to his actions and just all this fuel to the fire and escalation that had happened over the last 20-30 years that would just lead to the demise of the crown, at least for the time. Thanks for watching. As always, this has been Shield Brother 6 with your weekly dose of history. This green icon here, that is the House of Commons unique symbol. And I hope you learned something today. I hope you enjoyed. If you do, please leave a like. If you don't, please go ahead and leave a dislike. And as always, if you have a question, a comment, or a concern, please leave a comment. And go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And as always, I'll catch you next time.